Why Justin Bieber didn't expose P. Diddy is not a question about one specific person, and it's not a story about a single rapper and a single pop idol. It's a story about how voices break when people enter a world too early where adult games are played without rules and children become currency. When we look at Bieber today, quiet, exhausted, as if constantly apologizing for his own existence, we see the outcome, but we don't see the process. And that process began long before the first millions, long before world tours and fan hysteria. It began the moment a boy was told he was special, but only as long as he remained useful. The industry never takes people by force. It does something far more terrifying. It makes you want to belong to it yourself. Your promised family, protection, mentors, people who know how things work here. And when a figure like P. Diddy appears nearby, it doesn't look dangerous. It looks like safety, like acceptance, like proof that you're under someone's wing. And in that moment, the main trap is set. You stop seeing the line between someone who helps you survive and someone who controls your life. Justin didn't just grow up in front of the public. He grew up under constant surveillance by people who made money from his every step. His emotions, his body, his mistakes, his breakdowns, everything became content. Everything was monetized. And in that kind of reality, truth stops being a moral category. It becomes an asset or a threat. And if the truth threatens people who are too powerful, its price rises sharply. Not in money, in consequences. When people say, "Why didn't he just speak up?" that question comes from someone who has never been part of a closed system. Because inside such systems, there is no such thing as just. Everything is built on mutual silence, on compromise, on a shared sense of dirt you can no longer wash off. Even if you were a victim, you're taught that you're guilty too, that you participated too, that you stayed silent for too long. And at some point, you start to believe that the truth won't cleanse you. It will only finish destroying you. Look at Bieber's psychological state over the years. This isn't just difficulty dealing with fame. This is a person constantly balancing between the desire to disappear and the obligation to remain public. Sudden outbursts followed by total isolation, followed by attempts to start over, followed by another collapse. That's not celebrity fatigue. That's what a person looks like when they live under a constant internal ban on speech. When there's a story inside you, but you know it doesn't belong to you. And here it's important to understand, P. Diddy is not just one man. He's a symbol of a level of power, a knot of connections, a part of a vertical hierarchy where decisions aren't made publicly and aren't made by one person. To expose a figure like that is not to challenge an individual. It's to challenge a system that has spent decades proving it knows how to protect itself. And Justin saw that. He saw what happens to those who become inconvenient, how they're first devalued, then labeled unstable, then ungrateful, then dangerous to themselves. And after that, silence. Silence in these conditions is not the absence of truth. It's a form of negotiation with reality, a negotiation where you agree to fall apart slowly instead of instantly. You choose depression over erasure, addiction over oblivion, therapy over war. Because a war against the system is a war in which there are no winners among those who fight alone. There's another layer, the most painful one. When someone enters situations like this too early, their psyche gets stuck in survival mode. You stop thinking in terms of right and wrong. You think in terms of dangerous and safe. And truth in that world is almost always dangerous, especially when you know it won't just hurt the guilty, but people just as broken as you. So Justin Bieber didn't expose P. Diddy not because he's weak and not because he's bad, but because he was taught the main rule of the industry. Survival belongs not to those who tell the truth, but to those who know when to stay silent. And while we continue to wait for confessions from people who are broken back in their teenage years, we miss a far more frightening thought. Maybe we're not looking at a star's silence, but at the consequences of collective agreement with how this machine is built. And in that sense, the question should be asked differently, not why didn't he expose him, but why do we still pretend he ever had a choice?